Pete and Carla arrived at the old house on a cold winter night. They had just gotten married, and this was their first trip together. Pete's uncle had offered them his vacation home, far from the noise of the city. The house was large and shadowy, with tall windows and creaking wooden walls. As they stepped inside, an uneasy feeling settled over them, though they tried to brush it off as excitement. Pete's uncle gave them a brief tour and said with a knowing smile, "This house is old and special. Strange things have happened here, but don't worry, they're just stories." Carla smiled nervously, but something about the house made her feel like unseen eyes were watching. That night, after a quiet dinner, they went to bed. The house was silent except for the wind outside. In the middle of the night, Carla woke suddenly. She heard a soft voice calling her name. "Carla, Carla," it whispered. Her heart raced as she sat up and looked around the dark room. There was no one there. She considered waking Pete but didn't want to frighten him. She lay still, listening to nothing but the wind and her own pounding heart. The next morning, Pete asked if she had slept well. Inside, he found a dusty box covered in strange symbols. When he opened it, he discovered an old photograph of a woman standing in front of the house. Her smile was strange, too wide, almost inhuman. A chill ran through him. He quickly closed the box and hurried downstairs. When he found Carla, she looked pale and shaken. "Are you okay?" he asked. She glanced at the window, then back at him. "I keep hearing things," she whispered. "I think this house is haunted." Pete didn't believe in ghosts, but something in her eyes made him doubt himself. That night, the voice came again. "Carla, Pete," it called. This time, they both heard it. They rushed out of bed and down the hallway. The house felt darker and colder. At the end of the hall, the attic door stood slightly open. Without thinking, they pushed it wide. Inside stood a woman in a white dress. Her long black hair framed a pale, empty face. She stared out the window, motionless. When she slowly turned toward them, the room grew freezing cold. She opened her mouth, but instead of words, a terrible cry of sadness filled the air. Pete and Carla ran downstairs, shaking and confused. The next day, Pete visited his uncle. "Do you know anything about a ghost in the attic?" he asked. The uncle's face grew serious. "There's an old story," he said quietly. "A woman named Catherine once lived here. She waited for her husband Walter to return from America, but he never came back. People say she died of heartbreak. Some have seen her ghost still waiting by the window." Pete and Carla couldn't sleep that night, but the voice didn't return. The house felt different now, heavy with sadness. The next morning, Carla looked out the attic window and felt a strange connection to the ghost. "I want to help her," she told Pete. They searched the house for clues and found an old diary in a dusty drawer. It belonged to Catherine. Her entries were filled with longing and hope. She had waited years for Walter, writing each day about her loneliness. "I still wait by the window every day," one line read. Carla's eyes filled with tears. They visited the library and found an old newspaper article. Walter's ship had sunk, but his body was never recovered. Catherine must have never believed he was truly gone. That evening, they returned to the attic. Carla held the diary while Pete lit a candle. "Catherine," Carla said softly, "we know your story. We're sorry for your pain. Walter loved you. He wouldn't want you to suffer. You can rest now." A cold wind passed through the room. Catherine appeared again, her sad eyes meeting theirs. Carla placed the diary gently into her outstretched hand. Catherine looked down at it, and a single tear fell from her eye. She held the book to her chest, closed her eyes, and slowly faded away. The room grew warm again. The next morning, the house felt lighter. The shadows were gone, and the air was calm. In the attic, Catherine's photograph still sat in the box, but her smile now looked peaceful. Before they left, they stopped at a small coffee shop. An old man approached them and pointed at the diary Pete had brought. "I knew Catherine," he said, "and I heard that Walter did come back many years later. He was old and sick. He found her grave and wept for hours, then disappeared." Pete and Carla sat in silence, their hearts aching. Catherine had never known he returned. Back home, Carla placed the diary on a shelf. Sometimes at night, she would read a few pages and feel close to Catherine. Pete would sit beside her, and they would talk quietly about love, waiting, and letting go. The house stood silent now, its spirit finally at peace. But in their hearts, Catherine's story would live on forever. A reminder that love, even beyond death, deserves to be honored and set free.